In Ecuador, the President Guillermo Lasso declared a 60-day state of emergency and the mobilization of the armed forces throughout the national territory, following the murder of the presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio. The Israeli occupation army killed another Palestinian in Nablus, northern West Bank. And the leaders of the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland in Niger have appointed the new transitional government. Hello from the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is from the south. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Ecuador, the President Guillermo Lasso declared on Wednesday night a 60-day state of emergency and the deployment of the armed forces throughout the national territory, following the murder of the presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio. After concluding the emergency meeting of the Security Cabinet, the head of state decreed late on Wednesday the measure that affects the entire national territory. Additionally, also announced the deployment of military contingents and decreed a 3-day mourning period to honor the memory of the assassinated candidate. In the same speech, the president of the National Electoral Council, Diana Atamant, assured that the elections will not be suspended due to these events. And as part of the string of violent crimes that shook Ecuador, the bomb squad found an explosive device in the same place where Fernando Villavicencio was murdered. The package with explosives may have been thrown by hitmen after the attack. Afterwards, the officers carried out a controlled detonation in a secured sector of the area, a few meters from the clinic where Villavicencio was killed. The wave of violence that is shaking the country worsened alarmingly this Wednesday, when even the headquarters of his party, Movimiento Coalición, was vandalized. And let's see now a profile of Fernando Villavicencio.
Perfil, la foto de Fito.
Villavicencio was a journalist by profession and political activist born on October 11, 1963. Villavicencio became a presidential candidate after a short political career, but a long one in public life. He was a National Assemblyman between 2021 and 2023. During that time, he presided over the Commission of Political Control and Oversight. He promoted investigations, especially on oil issues, to the governments of Rafael Correa, Lenin Moreno, and the current government of Guillermo Lasso. His biggest investigation as an assembly member was the Petrochina case, in which he denounced a corruption scheme in oil intermediation. His last job in the assembly was leading the impeachment trial against President Lasso. In the assembly, he led the anti-corruption parliamentary front, from where he also presented several denunciations, among them of alleged links of candidates to the sectional offices with drug trafficking. After the activation of the cross-death, Villavicencio was the first to announce his intention to participate as a presidential pre-candidate. At the beginning of June, he presented environmentalist Andrea Gonzalez as his running partner.
We stay in the topic. In Ecuador, Luisa González, the candidate for the Citizen Revolution movement, expressed her solidarity with the family of the murdered candidate Fernando Villavicencio and reaffirmed that political differences must be settled at the polls.
They have just confirmed that the presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio has died. It is very sad news. Beyond a political flag, political differences are resolved at the polls, not with violence. As a political party, a citizens' revolution, we are in solidarity with Quito, with the family of candidate Villavicencio, because when they touch one, they touch us all.
For his part, the Ecuadorian presidential candidate Yacu Pérez Guardambel, through his social media, suspended his campaign activities while calling on all the candidates to unite in solidarity and take the concrete actions to demand security.
Outraged by this cowardly assassination of Fernando Villavicencio, the least I can do is express my solidarity with his family, supporters, militants, and for this reason I have decided to suspend the electoral campaign. I have invited the candidates to political flags behind and to make a social pact for security. Tomorrow in Quito, I invite them to take concrete measures. This cannot continue. We must stop the violence.
In other topics, the United States Embassy in Haiti closed on Tuesday due to the shooting that took place around the diplomatic headquarters in the capital of Haiti, Port-au-Prince. The Foreign Ministry explained in a statement that the facilities will not provide service to the public, but will be limited to some operations. The measures also include travel restrictions for the diplomatic mission personnel until further notice. In a statement reported by the U.S. agencies, the diplomatic staff informed that access may be hindered by the shooting in the vicinity of the diplomatic headquarters. The protests that have shaken the capital in the last few days hastened the decision. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. Lisbon District Court orders to return the Venezuela $1.5 billion withheld in Portugal. The judgment establishes the order for the Novo Bank to return the financial resource to the Venezuelan government, led by the President Nicolás Maduro. The court declares the judicial appeal well-founded and accordingly orders the Portuguese bank to reimburse the money in the Venezuelan holding accounts. The measure responds to a series of demands made by the government for the Novo Bank, one of more than 50 international banks that withholds state money, to return the appeal. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Venezuela, Iván Gil, stated on his Twitter account that Venezuela wins trial and regains control of the assets in Portugal. Moreover, he said that this is the result of long work and, above all, of the resistance of the Venezuelan people and the government of Nicolás Maduro, who will not give in to the threats of imperialism and the coup regime. Now we move on to other topics. In Russia, the armed forces shot down 2 drones headed for the capital, adding another foiled attack from Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry reported on Thursday that the anti-aircraft defenses shot down unmanned drones in the Kaluga province. Sebastopol and the Black Sea were also targeted by Ukrainian attacks. Russian forces shot down 2 drones in the former, and new ones were neutralized by electronic warfare equipment in the vicinity of the Black Sea, where they finally crashed. In none of the cases, the attacks left casualties nor material damages. And Russia denounced that the Polish authorities plan to create a Polish-Ukrainian unit to push ahead with the occupation of Western Ukraine. During a Security Council meeting, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said Warsaw seeks to use resources of the Western countries, which are indirectly confronting Russia. The Russian military chief stressed that Poland has become the main instrument of the United States' anti-Russian policy and has declared its intention of creating the most powerful army in Europe. Shoigu also reiterated the accusations against the United States for supporting the plan to supply weapons to Kiev with an increasingly lethal arsenal.
The West's willingness to invest a significant portion of available resources in Ukraine in order to turn the situation on the battlefield in its favor creates serious risk of further escalation of the conflict. Threats to the military security of the Russian Federation have multiplied in the western and northwestern strategic directions. A serious destabilizing factor is the ascension of Finland and, in the long term, Sweden to NATO. In the context of the growing shortage of ammunition for Western-style artillery systems in the Ukrainian armed forces, Washington has committed a war crime by including in the aid package cluster munitions, which are prohibited by international conventions. In addition, NATO countries are actively considering the transfer of F-16 tactical fighter jets to Kyiv.
тактических истребителей.
Now we move on to other topics. In northern China, the torrential rains that hit in recent days killed at least 62 people, tripling the number killed in Beijing alone in 1 week. Typhoon Doksuri, which caused widespread damage in parts of China last week, was downgraded to a storm after hitting the neighboring Philippines. Beijing and the neighboring province of Hebei were particularly hard hit, with Beijing experiencing its heaviest rainfall in 140 years. The death toll from the storms rose to at least 33, with 18 missing in Beijing alone, as devastating storms also hit northeastern China near Russia and North Korea. Beijing's deputy mayor, Xia Lin Mao, expressed in a press conference his deepest condolences, and he also called for a minute's silence for the victims. In Bangladesh, at least 19 people died due to flooding and landslides caused by the heavy rains. According to reports, more than 1 million people were affected by the rainfalls. Chittagong Divisional Commissioner's Office spokesperson Nilufa Yasmin confirmed that 5 people are still missing, while 6 others were injured. Meanwhile, the authorities opened some 2,234 shelters in the city, while the army is participating in rescue operations. The United Nations organization urged Iraq to take preventive and mitigation measures against climate change, drought, and the high levels of environmental pollution. The UN High Commissioner in Iraq, Volker Turk, said that the Iraqi authorities must take action against climate change. He also described Iraq's environmental degradation as a toxic mix of violence, oil industry excesses, global warming, reduced rainfall, and lack of effective water regulation and management. The Iraqi government recently announced the lowest water levels ever recorded in the world.
Rising temperatures plus the drought and the fact that even the loss of biodiversity is a daily reality, and it's really a wake-up call for the country but also for the world, because when we look into the situation of these communities, we look into our own future. The global era of the era of global boiling has started, and I think here we can live it and see it on a daily basis, and that's a very strong appeal on my part to the Iraqi authorities to make sure that environmental defenders are included, that they are listened to, that they can share data, that
On Thursday, the Israeli occupation army killed another Palestinian in Nablus, northern West Bank. The health ministry confirmed the death of 27-year-old Amir Khalifa, who was shot in the head after Israeli troops carried out a new operation in the area, considered by the Tel Aviv government to be a stronghold of the Palestinian resistance. Also on Thursday, according to the Wafa, 3 Palestinian youths were injured in the occupied city of Jerusalem following an assault by the Israeli settlers in a public park. With the assassination of Amir Khalifa, the number of Palestinian citizens killed so far in 2023 is up to 168, and 39 of them were minors. teleSUR English launches its own videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click on the video option to access our VOD platform. And now we will have a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Thursday, the leaders of the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland in Niger have appointed the new transitional government, inaugurating 21 ministers and Ali Lamine Zain as the prime minister. The decree was signed by General Abdurrahman Chani, who is at the head of the council after the military coup. The text states the executive is made up of civilian and military figures. In fact, Lamine Zain was Minister of Economy in a previous government and has no military ties. The decree of this transitional government coincides with the meeting of the leaders of the Economic Community of East African States, ECOWAS, in Nigeria. And on Wednesday, Niger's military junta accused France of trying to destabilize the country and violating its closed airspace. The accusation was read out on state television Wednesday by the junta's spokesperson, Colonel Major Amadou Abdaman, who said that the French forces had attacked a National Guard post, freeing people he said were terrorist prisoners.
Serious events underway in Niger as a result of the behavior of the French forces on a territory and their accomplices. Today, 9 August 2023, at around 6:30 a.m., the Niger National Guard position at Barku, 30 kilometers from the Samira gold mining site, came under attack. The number of casualties has not yet been established. However, as a reminder, through direct communication with Western partners, the behavior of the French forces was criticized for having unilaterally released captured terrorist prisoners. They have been grouped together in a valley in the village of Itili, 28 kilometers northwest of Yatakala, where a planning meeting had been held with the aim of attacking military positions in the tri-border area. The 16 liberated terrorist leaders were apprehended in 3 operations, including 2 on Niger territory on 16 June 2023 at Jessi, 38 kilometers from Bankilare, leading to the arrest of 3 terrorists, on 16 June 2023 at Makarma, leading to the arrest of 5 terrorists, on 7 July 2023 at Tina Disan, 15 kilometers west of Aurara, 45 kilometers northwest of Ayuru, in Malian territory, leading to the arrest of 9 terrorists. These acts reinforce our analysis of the situation, but beyond that, since the seizure of power by the CNSP with a view to a new security approach, we are witnessing a veritable plan to destabilize our country. These security disorders planned by these French forces, as was the case in Mali and Burkina Faso, aim to discredit the CNSP and create a break with the people who supported in its action to create a feeling of generalized insecurity.
And the Ethiopian Army announced that they took control in the 2 main cities of the Amhara region after fighting with Fano militants during the last 4 days. According to statements by the local residents, the situation is currently calm and peaceful, and no shots have been heard in the streets. Citizens assure that although there is no militia presence in the city of Bahir Dar, the defense forces continue to tour the city with tanks and other military vehicles. On its part, Save the Children organization called on Wednesday for the continuation of humanitarian aid access to families and children in Amhara, victims of the latest conflicts between the National Army and militia forces. On Wednesday in Zimbabwe, the President Emerson Mnangagwa addressed thousands of supporters in the capital Harare in a speech laden with calls for peace. The speech comes days after his supporters were accused of stoning an opposition activist to death, and human rights organizations questioned the credibility of general elections scheduled for August 23rd. Mnangagwa is seeking re-election and is facing a stern challenge from main opposition leader Nelson Chamisa, whom he narrowly beat in disputed polls in 2018. The opposition has accused him of relying on violence, intimidation, and institutions like the police and the courts to crack down on critical figures, ban opposition rallies, and prevent candidates from running. Zimbabwe has a record of violent and disputed elections since 1980, when it attained independence from white minority rule following a 1970s bloody guerrilla war. The Syrian President Bashar alAzzad granted an interview to Sky News Arabia where he spoke about multiple issues, including the fight against terrorism, the civil war, and relations with Arab countries. Bashar alAzzad stated that terrorism is the reason for the destruction in Syria and that those responsible are those who supported terrorism, attempted the war, and planned it, not those who fought against terrorism. Referring to the Israeli aggression in Syrian territory and its true objective, President Bashar alAzzad expressed that the Syrian army is the main target. As for the scenarios that were hatched in the region, President Assad said that the Syrian government was aware of the scenarios that were played and marketed in the media to create a state of terror. Finally, referring to the Western campaign to invade the country, the Syrian president stated that the target was not Gaddafi but Libya, and it was not Saddam Hussein but Iraq, and the target was not President Bashar but Syria. Possible meeting In relation to a possible meeting with Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Syrian leader said it was no use as long as it is meant to be held under Erdogan's conditions.
Race meeting without condition means that there is no work agenda, and without a work agenda there's no preparation, and no preparation means no results. Why then should I meet Erdogan? To have soft drinks? We want to reach an obvious objective. Our objective is the withdrawal from Syrian land, whereas Erdogan's objective in meeting me is to legitimize the Turkish occupation in Syria. So for that reason we cannot meet under Erdogan's rules.
Regarding a dialogue with the U.S. government, these were his words.
Dialogue has been ongoing but always cut short, so we never had hope, not even for a second, that the Americans were going to change, because the Americans take, and don't give anything. This is the nature of the relationship with the Americans from 1974. 4 decades have passed and we haven't achieved anything with any administration. We don't have any hope, but our policy in Syria has always been to leave the door open to any attempt.
Unlike this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.